Hey creative souls, writers, word witches, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm very happy that you're here. In this video, I'll be talking about how the full moon in Gemini can benefit and influence your writing practice. This time I've consulted two of my favorite astrologers, Jimmy at the Tarot Ship and Nadia Shah. So I'll put the links to their channels in the description. Before we get started, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Johnny. I'm a retired adjunct writing professor, and I currently teach fiction writing and screenwriting to adults in custody. I call myself a word witch, and I believe I'm on this earth to heal the world through stories, whether it's the ones I write and tell or the ones that I help you write and tell. Thank you all so much for your likes, shares, and subscribes, because I'm slowly but surely growing my channel and doing more in my quest to create a community of like-minded creatives who embrace the power of story to heal. So let's talk about this full moon. As I said, it's in Gemini. It occurs on Sunday, December 15th at 1 a.m. Pacific time and 4 a.m. Eastern time. And it comes at a time when there's a lot of slowing down going on due to several retrogrades, which I'll talk about in just a moment. Of course, we're still in a Mercury retrograde, and it's been stationing to go direct. In fact, it does start to go direct on the same day as the full moon. But when a planet goes direct, it still needs a little bit more time to really pick up speed again and start moving. And so I would say give it another week or two. But after the 15th, we should be clear again to make those big decisions and, all those things that the experts say not to do during a retrograde, like sign contracts and expect travel mix-ups and committing to big things in life. So while it's safe to do that, just know that there will be some sluggishness hanging on for another week or two. And don't forget, Mercury is about communication, so that covers verbal communication. Words can be misconstrued. It also has to do with writing. So if your writing has been feeling sluggish, it's okay. Writing is not a straight through line. It's not an A to Z endeavor. There's an ebb and flow to the creative process. Just the way Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, our writing also goes in and out and in and out, in potency, in regularity, because our mind needs that time to produce and create and then to reconsider and revise and rework. Communication's also about technology, so maybe you've had emails and never made it to you or to someone you sent them to. Maybe words have been misconstrued in an email. And as I said a bit earlier, it also can affect travel plans. So there could be mix-ups, delays. If you've had some of that, just know that we're about to enter an opening of sorts. So as far as the other retrogrades go, Mars went retrograde on December 6th. So if you remember, it was in Cancer, and then it moved out, and now it's retrograding, so it's going to dip back into Cancer and be there until, I think, the end of January. And then it'll finally be getting the hell on with life starting February. I am so ready for that one. If you've been feeling lethargic or sluggish, it could be due to the Mars retrograde. Because if you think about it, Mars is all about blazing forward, making things happen. So when it's moving backwards, that feeling of forward movement is going to be pulled back. And this is on top of that retrograde with Mercury. Jupiter has also been retrograde since the beginning of October, I believe. And it will stay that way until early February. So that could mean that the thing you've been hoping for and wishing for might just sit and twiddle its thumbs a little bit longer. So it's all about patience. And I'm not here to say that I've mastered that. I have not. There are plenty of things in my life, and specifically around my writing, that I just lately have been feeling like, how the hell much longer do I need to wait for this? And so I'm looking forward to all these planets going direct and just see what happens. Uranus has also been retrograde since early September, and it will also move its ass the end of January. In the meanwhile, life can feel a bit chaotic because Uranus just does that. So it can be a little bit like a bull in a china shop. Lastly, Chiron has been retrograde since, I believe, late July, and it will finally go direct December 29th. So what does Chiron do? It's thought of as the wounded healer. So it could be that you've been dealing with some of those deep wounds that your shadow side has been protecting you from. But come March, when all of these planets are finally moving forward again, look out. We're all going to be like a bunch of bees being released from a jar, or a bucking bronco let out of its stall. There's going to be a lot of pent-up stuff. And so maybe in your writing you've been feeling, maybe not purposefully holding back, but just feeling like things maybe haven't been flowing as well as you would like, or maybe your stories haven't been moving either in the writing itself or in terms of submitting it and getting published. may have just felt like things are in a little bit of a gridlock. We just have a little bit longer to go, according to the planets, and then in March, things should really take off. However, with all of this messiness going on, this full moon has a certain degree of kind of romanticism around it because it's trining Venus. So amidst all these messy retrogrades, there's this really nice harmonious vibe. So it's not all bad, and it's not all difficult. My recommendation is to go for a moonwalk on Saturday night, just a few hours before you go to bed, a few hours before the full moon is at its fullest. Not only will you get in a writer's walk, so that your subconscious can sort out any writing dilemmas that you might be grappling with, you can also soak up all that harmonious moonlight. And remember, even if you live in an area where it's cloudy, like me, it's really a rarity in the winter that I get to see most of the full moons because it's so cloudy where I live. But even if that's the case, the moon's energy still filters down to us. And remember that full moons illuminate things. All that bright light in the sky, whether we see it or not, sheds this light, literally and metaphorically. Full moons can also culminate things, especially as Jimmy points out with the seeds that you planted back in June, with the corresponding new moon in Gemini that happened then. So if you can remember back what you were doing with your writing, what you might have been struggling with or working on, what might have been going well, and what your intentions were back then with your writing practice, and see how far you've come in these 6 months. What were you doing then? What were you starting? Are you maybe now finishing a project that you started back then? Or have you made significant headway? Is it that kind of culmination? Or is the culmination more about something you've been trying to sort out with your novel? Maybe you have some kind of breakthrough around this full moon with Mercury going direct. Maybe you'll find it easier to communicate and connect with your characters now. Maybe you've come full circle since June and you have an epiphany about how to tie up what maybe has felt like loose ends. Maybe to make connections in a subplot as it relates to the major plot. Or maybe you discover that the character you haven't quite been able to bring to life doesn't really need to be in your story or your novel at all. Despite all these retrogrades and the likelihood that things have felt messy in your writing life are not quite tuned in, keep in mind that this full moon in Gemini is ruled by Mercury, because Mercury is Gemini's ruling planet, and it's conjunct Jupiter, and Jupiter is about luck and abundance. And with Mercury going direct, all those things working together, there's a strong chance for good news and good things. Maybe you'll get that yes that you've been hoping for, or maybe you suddenly have more time to write now, or you get paid for something that you've written. Or maybe you get invited to work on a really cool project with some really cool people, and there's tons of potential around it. So just toss those wishes out there and do a little spell and really wish big. Like there's nothing wrong with wishing big. Bigger than big, like really blow up what you want. Think the biggest, most fabulous, best thing that could ever happen to you in your writing life and put that out into the world and believe that it can happen for you. And then even if that thing doesn't happen or doesn't happen in the time frame that you want it, think of all the other things that will happen in the meanwhile because you're striving for that really big, fabulous thing. You really can't go wrong in doing that. And like I said before, just remember when a station moves to go direct, it can really kick up some dust in the area of its influence. So we have all of these planets that I mentioned earlier going direct in quick succession of each other. So things might feel a little bit wobbly and messy still through March, or up to March, I should say. So just hang in there and let yourself just be. Don't force the writing, just let it be and let yourself be and let what comes, come, and then work with what you have. So hang in there and just let yourself be and work with what you have. Don't try to put parameters around it, don't judge it, don't hold it to some level of perfection, and just let this energy settle. As I always say, when in doubt, write. Writing is like the very best friend you could ever have. It never expects perfection. If the expectation for perfection is there, that comes from you. It doesn't come from the writing. It's just there for you to lean on, to embrace, and be with in whatever way you can at any given time. It always takes you as you are. This energy with Mercury involved is also about high intellect and logic. So if you want or need alone time to just kind of be in your own head, it's okay. Do your best to get that. Do your best to allow that for yourself, to create it if you need to. And then you can use your writing to make sense of it all. I've seen people sometimes working on a project and they feel like that whenever they sit down to write, that's the only thing they can work on. That's the only thing they can write. And I really think that's a big mistake, because I think we need that breathing room, like I was saying earlier, that ebb and flow. And so sometimes it makes sense to just take a break and write other things, even if it's just an exercise in getting things out of your head that you're thinking about, even if it's just about writing down hard emotions that you're dealing with. It just gets things outside you. And then you can go back to the project. It's always there waiting. And if you have this feeling like you have to get it right before you can move on to other things, then I think what you're doing is creating this really difficult kind of pressure that you're putting on the project and on your writing. And so writing is a lot about just letting go and letting it be, and then coming back to check in on what you've done. Trying to get it right when you're putting the words on the page is a big mistake. It's the going back. It's the revisiting and rewriting when the real writing happens. Mercury going direct on Sunday and with this full moon might give you this big hit of clarity, which relates to that culmination that the full moon brings that I mentioned earlier. So maybe something that you've been working on that's been confusing suddenly becomes clear. Or maybe something that's been going on in your life that's been interfering with your writing gets moved out of the way. And then you have this very clear path in front of you. Here's another kind of energy to be aware of right now. The full moon is squaring Neptune. And Neptune is all about dreamy illusion, which can be fun, but it can also get us into trouble if we don't ground the illusions in reality. And I know maybe that seems contradictory, but we need those illusions, our imagination as writers, so that we can write. And like I was saying earlier, think really big, make these big wishes, let your big desires be known. So dream yes, and dream big, think big. Imagine your screenplay being optioned by a Hollywood studio. But don't sell your house and move to LA before it's all a done deal, before everybody's signed on the dotted line, before everything is set. Unless, of course, you've been planning on doing that all along and you're set to do that financially, logistically, then sure, go ahead and do that. So dream big and trust your intuition. That's the key part, trusting your intuition. And just take care not to be led astray by this illusionary kind of dreamlike, fantastical thinking that Neptune can bring. And take care not to be led astray by those bright, shiny objects that Neptune can sometimes throw in front of us. It's kind of a Neptune tease. Going over the top and making big life plans based on a big dream without evidence that they could come to pass could lead to a big disappointment, or even worse. So as Nadia Shah says, this could be about reconciling that which is not ideal in the moment. It could be about big reality checks amidst this veil of illusion from Neptune, and getting real about difficult situations that we may have created for ourselves. So if you've painted yourself in a corner with your writing, it's okay. You can paint yourself back out. Even though it might feel overwhelming, it's doable. And you want to listen to your characters, yes. And you also have the power to steer the ship in a different direction. Immediately after the moon is full in Gemini on the 15th, it moves into Cancer. So the moon rules Cancer, so that means all the feelings. So don't be surprised by that if lots of big feelings well up inside you. So I would say avoid confrontations unless you're moved to write that really tense scene that you've been putting off. Channel anger, frustration, sadness, jealousy, shame into your writing. Even if you're putting, as I said earlier, words on the page that don't relate to your current project, to your novel, a short story that you're working on. Jimmy says that all of this energy will also allow us to vibrate at a higher frequency. And he recommends gravitating towards the arts, which is good news for us, right? So it's a great time to take in the arts of others or focus on your own. And for as much as I harp on the truth that we cannot wait to be inspired in order to write, that inspiration comes when we sit down and write. This moon can also filter down a lot of inspiration for us. So just really be open to that and sit down and write and see what comes. Take that moonwalk, like I mentioned. I also want to mention something else that's going on that Nadia talks about. And this is going to feel like a big digression, but it ties into what we're talking about. And it really informs this period right now that we're in. And these are the asteroids of Eros, or Cupid, as some people call it. So I believe Eros is Greek and Cupid is Roman. And then there's the asteroid Psyche. So this is their story, if you don't know it. So whether we want to call it Eros or Cupid, it's an asteroid of love, and it's involved in the story of Psyche. And briefly, the story goes like this. First, Eros, the son of Aphrodite, thought of as the personification of intense desire, intense erotic desire, and said to shoot arrows into people's hearts to make them fall in love. Psyche is the human soul personified in the form of a girl, actually a princess, who has been purified and sort of saved from passion and misfortune. So she's sort of been prepared for eternal happiness. And as the story goes, Aphrodite was jealous of Psyche because Psyche was this mortal princess who possessed this beauty that people just could not deny. People noticed her, commented on it, flocked to her, wanted to be near her. And this made Aphrodite jealous because Psyche was taking attention away from her. So she asked her son Eros to take care of Psyche while she slept and to shoot her with one of his arrows so that she would fall in love with the most despicable creature on earth. The interesting thing about this is that Psyche couldn't fall in love with just anyone, and it seemed that no one could fall in love with her. She had two sisters who were able to find love, but for Psyche, many were drawn to her exterior beauty but could never follow through. I'm guessing because she had a lot more depth than her sisters, and that scared the men away. So when Eros wanders over to perform this task for his mother, Aphrodite, he's so overwhelmed by the beauty of Psyche that he botches the job and ends up piercing himself with the arrow. And so he falls head over heels in love with Psyche, and they get married. But Psyche's basic bitchy sisters become jealous of her happiness, and so they interfere, and they create this mistrust between Psyche and Eros. And this causes Eros to leave Psyche, and Psyche is heartbroken. So she wanders the earth looking for Eros. And it isn't until she completes 4 tasks assigned to her by Aphrodite, who I guess has come around somewhat, that she's reunited with Eros, and then Aphrodite grants Psyche immortality. So the point of this big old digression is that the energy of Eros, the asteroid, is operating hand in hand with the sun now, under the light of this full moon. So in other words, they're conjunct. And this energy of Eros will be at play from December 6th, so that has already happened. And it's hanging around, it's in full force right now, and it's going to be around until February 23rd of 2025. So what does all this mean for us as writers? Nadia describes Eros as a principle of electricity. It can cause abrupt wake-ups. It's about the electricity of love and passionate desire and how we direct that energy. So in the realm of writing, are you shooting your metaphorical arrow in the right direction? Are you awakening the parts of you that can help you? Are you awakening your characters in a way that can best serve them and you? And with all this comes the need for surrender, to give into the falling in love with your creativity, with your practice, with your characters, and of course with yourself, with your own creative mind. This powerful energy can leave us feeling the way love can sometimes. It can feel like it comes out of nowhere. It can make us feel somewhat powerless at times. So be willing to let yourself be stirred and challenged with this energy and these deep feelings that might come with the moon moving into Cancer directly after it's full, with Eros being involved. And then there's that Venus conjunction that I mentioned earlier. And especially think about those deep feelings that come from patterns in your own psyche. And remember that Psyche, the princess in the story, is about the embodiment of the soul. And this could be related to very early life experiences for either you or your characters, but we may not, especially our own, we may not be consciously aware of them. And maybe even our characters, because our characters are facets of us, and sometimes we can be blind to their wounds, to their pasts and their histories. So guess what? This is once again about going to the underworld, because this was one of the tasks that Aphrodite assigned to Psyche, so she could be with Eros again. So here's yet another opportunity to face your demons, face your wounds, face your dark side, your shadow, however you want to frame it for yourself, so that you can be one with love, just like Psyche. And in this case, that one is you. It's your creativity. So here's your chance to go deeper than before. Dive down into the depths of your own inner knowing, despite any fears of powerlessness, and exercise your faith in yourself and faith in the creative process. And then understand that on Thursday, following the full moon, Venus and Mars are across from each other. So what's that story? Well, these two powerful entities, as Nadia says, found each other absolutely irresistible. And they came together and they created Eros. So they are the parents of Eros. So there's going to be a little family affair going on in the sky. And it's all about love and passion and all this electric energy. And this could cause feelings of being propelled together with another. The way Nadia puts it, she said, this is about what we do to draw people in. Mars is about being propelled to another. And this energy is more heightened when it's directly across from Venus. And she says that Mars is at its heightened power right now, during this moment on the Thursday following the full moon. And it's close to the Earth, closer than usual, so it heightens our awareness of our own desires. And the good news is that we can more readily see more clearly into our own minds and our own hearts, which is good to know when we consider the illusion of Neptune that I mentioned earlier. So how might we interpret this in relation to our writing? Maybe you'll feel compelled to start writing erotica. This would be a great time to do that. Maybe you'll write a masterful love scene. Maybe you'll find a way for two of your important characters to find their way back to each other. Whatever it is, lovely writer, no matter how you're compelled to use this complex energy, as always, I send you mad writing mojo. Happy writing.